Russia is in a difficult position. In a year of special military operations, they have suffered enormous losses in manpower and equipment. The economic consequences of the sanctions have already begun to show. It is no longer perceived as an active player in the market, but rather as someone from whom to drain off as many resources as possible before the Iron Curtain closes. And paradoxically, they are not going to stop because this war is caused by an existential threat to all of Russia. Putin and his accomplices will not feel safe until they have built a wall of buffer countries and gray zones, so that in case of a threat, the conventional enemy, of course it's NATO, who else, would have to pass through a number of allied countries before invading Mother Russia. And that is why. Retired United States Army officer Ben Hodges suggests that the war for Russia and Putin personally will end in total collapse. Like and subscribe, and let's get straight to the topic. In a recent interview, he shared his thoughts and insights on the current situation. First of all, he touched upon the odious figure of Yevgeny Prigozhin, the main philanthropist and owner of the Wagner PMC. He was an author of a strategy to mobilize prisoners from prisons whom he used as cannon fodder in counterattacks on Ukrainian defenders' positions. And this strategy has not succeeded. Wagner suffers heavy losses, which in the big picture are not worth the effort at all. In light of military setbacks, the Kremlin's announcement that Prigozhin's name should not be used in any official Russian media marks the beginning of the isolation of his figure. Russian President Vladimir Putin is facing significant changes within his country, with conflicting forces at play. If Crimea is liberated, Putin's hold on power may be tenuous by the end of the year. Amidst all this, the Chechen leader Kadyrov is watching and waiting. He talks a lot, but there is little news of Chechen soldiers being killed, indicating that he is protecting them for his own interests. History shows that outnumbered armies have successfully defended their countries, and the numbers reported by Russia may not reflect the actual number of fighters. Despite the many uncertainties, one thing is clear. Ukraine has a substantial number of troops. While the numbers reported by Russia may be disputed, Ukraine has a robust military force that could prove to be a formidable opponent. But how will this help Ukraine to win this war? And what's the key component to defeating Russian forces? According to Hodges, the key way to win this war is to hit the supply chains of the Russian army, disrupting the already stunted supply of troops. Longer-range precision capabilities are also needed to effectively combat the Russian troops. The U.S. administration has been cautious about any action that could escalate the situation, but the speaker believes that more needs to be done to support Ukraine. The expert emphasized that Ukraine has the right to defend itself and has been impressive in resisting launching high-bar stakes against Russian systems inside Russia, even if it meant that the support group, the Ramstein contact of countries, would begin to fall away. The expert also noted that Ukraine has used some drones to go after airfields inside Russia and has shown restraint by not striking targets in Belarus. He believes that Ukraine will continue to be disciplined, intelligent, and creative in its approach to the conflict while recognizing the need to make strategic calculations. Ben Hodges also pointed out that Alexander Lukashenko does not want to involve his soldiers in the conflict and that soldiers from Belarus would likely be destroyed in days if they entered the fight. The people of Belarus are also not interested in the conflict with the people of Ukraine. But Belarus will always, at least until the end of the conflict, create threats on Ukraine's northern borders, forcing it to keep a close eye on its actions. Because of this, Ukraine has to keep forces along its entire border with Belarus and Russia, because anything can be expected from them. Although tensions on the border still persist, what about the rocket terror unleashed by Russia? Has it paid off and broken the morale of Ukrainians? Hodges also expressed concern about the strategic bombing campaign launched by Russia. The analyst stated that the objectives of the campaign have failed in every aspect, and the expensive missiles, drones, and rockets have not given Russia any strategic advantage. Instead, the bombing has only made the struggle for Ukraine stronger, and it has failed to reduce the will of the Ukrainian people. The analyst emphasized that the more Russia continues to bomb civilian targets and waste expensive missiles, the more it causes the West to want to defeat them. The terrible winter for the whole of Europe due to the lack of Russian gas, which the Russian propaganda painted for the public, was not so terrible and quite warm. Prices went up, that's a fact, but terrible things did not happen. The blackout and collapse of Ukraine's own infrastructure were not a success either. Yes, there were blackouts and rocket attacks, but life did not stop. Russian missiles, by the way, proved not to be such a formidable weapon, once again showing the world that the greatness of Russian weapons is on paper, not in reality. Ukraine's air defenses are stronger than ever, and the Ukrainians are even more determined and ruthless against the aggressor. They have achieved diametrically opposite results by their actions. He stressed that Russia should not forget that the West sees everything and that the possible war crimes committed by Russia in the conflict will not go unpunished. While accountability will come eventually, Russia's actions are causing catastrophic consequences. A U.S. general revealed that their president, Joe Biden, has already warned Russia against using nuclear weapons, and that it has been communicated to the Kremlin via different channels. The ongoing conflict between Russia and Ukraine has created a sense of unease in the international community. While Russia may have amassed a large number of troops near the border, its strategic bombing campaign has failed to give them any significant advantage. Is the nuclear threat real? Are Russians really gonna do this? Despite Russia's aggressive tactics, Ben Hodges does not believe that the general staff of the Russian military has any interest in using nuclear weapons. It would not give them any advantage on the battlefield, and the consequences would be catastrophic. In the Cold War, the Soviet Union had tactical nuclear weapons that were used to create a gap in NATO defenses, but this is not the case anymore. There is no mobile force trained and equipped to operate in a contaminated environment, and the use of nuclear weapons would only result in the loss of innocent lives and the destruction of towns. And not only Ukrainian, but also Russians. The maximum they can do is a short-range tactical nuclear weapon, and even then, China and India look at such flirtations with weapons of mass destruction with undisguised irritation. The world has yet to experience the use of nuclear weapons in a conventional war. If they start, others will pick up on it. The big players don't need this at all. Although Russia, according to Hodges, must be defeated on the battlefield, the war must end with a peace agreement. He shed light on the current state of affairs and highlighted the need for a peaceful resolution to this conflict. It is essential that all parties involved exercise restraint and work towards a solution that benefits everyone involved. All in all, Hodges concludes a miracle for Russia has not happened. There was a small operational pause during the winter, although Russia continued to press in the east and even managed to advance and seized Soledar. They also gradually, with heavy losses, squeezed the ring around Bakhmut. Is this a victory? Strategically, not really. Given the increased casualties, according to the Ukrainian Armed Forces General Staff, over 40,000 dead so far, and the monstrous footage from Donbas, Russia has completely switched to its favorite tactic of pelting the enemy with waves of cannon fodder, exhausting the enemy. If you press on one point for too long, one day it will break. But this does not change the overall picture. The occupied territories are in constant danger of missile incursions. The local population, for the most part, is hostile. The status of the war itself is still unconfirmed inside Russia, and things are not called by their names. Friction is growing. The persecution of Prigozhin has begun. Kadyrov, The head of Chechnya, as one of the leaders of the Russian power bloc, is thinking more and more about personal security than about the interests of Russia. And you can see for yourself the lean faces of those in power during Putin's annual speech. No one is particularly enthusiastic. What can Russia do? Keep pushing threatening with nuclear weapons, train more and more of its own mobilized citizens for suicidal attacks on the positions of the Ukrainian armed forces, and so on until they achieve some strategic successes such as the capture of Donbas. Then we can stand on blind defenses and demand negotiations. At least there will be something to sell on Russia's domestic media market so that citizens will be assured that everything is going according to plan. But Ukraine has its own plans. Arms deliveries are increasing every day. Soldiers are finishing their training in training centers all over Europe, and a counteroffensive is coming. One can only guess and speculate about where it will be and what it will be, but one thing is certain. This spring offensive should set the tone for exactly how this conflict will end. All we have to do is watch what happens. Thank you for watching this video. Don't forget to like it and subscribe. Thank you. Peace.